The sun was setting over the Texas plains when Jacob Miller rode up to the Henderson farm. His leather saddlebag carried papers that would change everything for the family living in that weathered homestead. Papers that gave him the right to take their land. Jacob was 32 and good at his job. Too good, some said. He collected debts for the bank in Austin, and he never walked away empty-handed. The brown vest he wore had seen 100 foreclosures. The hat on his head had shaded his eyes through countless confrontations, but nothing had prepared him for what he would find at the Henderson place. Thomas Henderson owed the bank $3,000. The drought had killed his crops 2 years running. His cattle had died of disease. Now the bank wanted their money, and Jacob was there to take the land if Thomas could not pay. As Jacob dismounted, he noticed how quiet everything was. The barn door hung crooked on its hinges. The fence posts leaned like old men too tired to stand straight. This was a place where hope had slowly bled away. Then she appeared. Sarah Henderson stepped out onto the porch, and for a moment Jacob forgot why he had come. She was maybe 24 or 25, with dark hair that caught the golden light of the dying day. She wore a simple dress the color of prairie grass, and she held herself with a dignity that seemed too large for such a small, failing farm. Her eyes met his, and Jacob saw no fear there, only a deep, quiet sadness that made his chest tighten. "You are from the bank," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am. Jacob Miller. I am here to see your father, Thomas Henderson." Sarah looked back toward the house. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "My father is not well. The worry has eaten at him. The doctor says his heart is weak." Jacob had heard such things before. Sick fathers, desperate families, children who pleaded for more time. He had learned to harden himself against such stories. But something in Sarah's voice made him pause. "I still need to speak with him, ma'am. It is about the debt. I know why you are here," Sarah said. She descended the porch steps slowly, each footfall deliberate. "You have come to take our land. This land that my grandfather cleared with his own hands. This land where my mother is buried beneath the cottonwood tree." Jacob shifted his weight. The papers in his bag suddenly felt heavier. "Ma'am, I am just doing my job. The bank has been patient, but the debt must be settled." Sarah stopped 3 feet away from him. This close, he could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, marks left by too much sun and too much sorrow. She smelled like lavender and wood smoke. "My father is inside sleeping," she said. "He does not know you are coming today? If you wake him with this news, if you tell him we are losing the land, it will kill him. The doctor said any great shock could stop his heart." Jacob looked away, toward the horizon where the sun was melting into red and gold. He had a job to do. The bank did not care about sick fathers or daughters with sad eyes. But then Sarah said something that changed everything. "What if I offered you something else?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "What if I could give you something of value, something to take back to the bank to buy us time?" Jacob frowned. "Ma'am, unless you have $3,000, there is nothing." "I am offering myself," Sarah said. The words hung in the air between them like a shot that had been fired but not yet struck its target. Jacob stared at her. "What?" Sarah's hands were trembling, but her voice stayed steady. "I will go with you. I will work for the bank, for you, for whoever will have me. I will be a housekeeper, a cook, whatever is needed. Just spare him. Let my father keep this land. Let him die in peace in the home he built. Ma'am, I cannot. Please." Now her voice cracked, and Jacob saw the tears standing in her eyes, though she refused to let them fall. "He is all I have. This land is all he has. I am 25 years old, and I have nothing else to offer. No money, no skills that the world values. But I am strong, and I am willing. Just let him keep the land." Jacob felt something breaking inside his chest, some wall he had built up over the years of hard work and harder decisions. He looked at this young woman who was offering to sacrifice herself for her father, and he saw something he had almost forgotten existed. He saw pure love. "Put your hands down, ma'am," Jacob said quietly. "You do not have to beg." He walked past her to his horse and stood there for a long moment, one hand on the saddle. Behind him, he could hear Sarah's ragged breathing. He thought about the papers in his bag. He thought about his boss in Austin, a man with cold eyes and a colder heart. He thought about his own father. dead 10 years now, who had taught him that a man's worth was measured by how he treated those who could do nothing for him. Jacob turned around. "How much can you pay?" he asked. Sarah blinked. "What? How much can you pay on the debt?" "Not all of it, I know that. But something, anything." "I have $87, Sarah said. "I have been saving it for 3 years. It was supposed to be for seed next spring, but that will do for now," Jacob said. Sarah's eyes widened. "I do not understand." Jacob pulled the papers from his bag and looked at them in the fading light. $3,000, a sum that would crush this family. He thought about what would happen if he went back to Austin empty-handed. He would lose his job, certainly. He might be blacklisted from working for any bank in Texas. But he thought about Sarah's offer, the terrible desperation that would drive a young woman to trade herself for her father's peace. He thought about the world that created such choices, and he knew he could not be part of it. Not anymore. "I am going to write in my report that I received partial payment today," Jacob said. $87. "I am going to recommend that the bank extend the loan for another year, with reduced interest, given the hardship of the drought." "But they will never agree to that," Sarah said. Jacob smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Probably not. But it will buy you time. Maybe 3 months, maybe 6, while they process my report and send someone else out here. Maybe by then the rains will come. Maybe you can plant a crop and sell it. Maybe your father will get better and find a way to earn some money." "And what about you?" Sarah asked. "What will happen to you when they find out?" "I suppose I will have to find a new line of work," Jacob said. They stood in silence for a moment. The sun had set now, and the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. From inside the house came the sound of coughing. Harsh and wet. "I should check on him," Sarah said, but she did not move. "Go on," Jacob said gently. Sarah turned toward the house, then stopped and looked back. "Why are you doing this?" "You do not know us. You owe us nothing." Jacob thought about how to answer that. He thought about all the families he had evicted, all the homes he had helped the bank seize. He thought about the weight he had been carrying for years, the weight of being the man who brought bad news and worse consequences. "Maybe I am tired of being the villain in other people's stories," he said finally. "Maybe I want to be something better, even if it is just this once." Sarah's face softened. "You are a good man, Jacob Miller." "I am trying to be," Jacob said. "That is all any of us can do, I suppose. Try to be a little better than we were yesterday." Sarah went inside, and Jacob heard her speaking softly to her father. He could not make out the words, but he heard the relief in her voice. He mounted his horse and was about to ride away when Sarah came back out. "Wait!" she called. She ran down the steps and pressed something into his hand. It was a small cloth bundle, still warm. "Cornbread," she said. "I baked it this morning. It is not much, but I want you to have it." Jacob looked down at the simple gift, and his throat tightened. "Thank you, ma'am." "Thank you," Sarah said, "for giving us hope, for seeing us as people and not just a debt to be collected." Jacob rode away from the Henderson farm as the night settled over the land. He ate the cornbread as he rode, and it was the best thing he had tasted in years. Not because it was particularly well made, but because it represented something he had almost stopped believing in: kindness, compassion, the possibility that people could choose mercy over money. When he got back to Austin 3 days later, Jacob went straight to his boss's office and submitted his report. He recommended the loan extension and included Sarah's $87. His boss read the report with increasing anger, his face turning red. "You are fired," the man said flatly. "Pack your things and get out." Jacob had expected this, but it still stung. "Yes, sir. And Miller? I am sending someone else out to the Henderson place next week. Someone who will actually do the job. That land will be ours by month's end." Jacob felt his stomach drop, but he kept his face neutral. "Yes, sir." He walked out of the bank and into the bright Texas sunshine. He had $83 to his name, no job and no prospects. But he did not feel defeated. He felt strangely free. That night, Jacob sat in his small room above the general store and made a decision. He would ride back to the Henderson farm. He would warn them about the new collector, and he would help them find a way out of their debt, even if he had to work the land himself. It took him a week to settle his affairs in Austin. He sold his good clothes and bought work clothes instead. He sold his fancy saddle and bought tools, and then he rode north, back toward the failing farm and the young woman with sad eyes who had offered to sacrifice everything for her father. When he arrived at the Henderson place, Sarah was in the garden trying to coax life from the dry soil. She looked up at the sound of his horse and stood slowly, shading her eyes against the sun. "Mr. Miller," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "What are you doing here?" Jacob dismounted and removed his hat. "I have come to help if you will have me. The bank fired me for recommending that loan extension. They are sending someone else, someone who will not be as understanding. You have maybe 2 weeks before he arrives." Sarah's face paled. 2 weeks? That is not enough time to earn $3,000. "No, ma'am, it is not," Jacob agreed. "But it might be enough time to find another way. Maybe we can find a buyer for some of the land. Maybe I can help work the fields and we can produce something to sell. I do not know if any of it will be enough, but I know I cannot just ride away and leave you to face this alone." "But why?" Sarah asked. "Why would you sacrifice your job, your future, for people you barely know?" Jacob looked around at the struggling farm, at the house that was falling apart, at the girl who stood before him with dirt under her fingernails and hope dying in her eyes. "Because you were willing to sacrifice everything for your father," he said simply. "Because in a world that often seems cruel and cold, you showed me that love still exists. Real love, the kind that puts others before yourself. I want to honor that. I want to be worthy of that kind of goodness." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks now, and she did not try to stop them. "We cannot pay you." "I am not asking to be paid," Jacob said. "I am asking to help." Sarah nodded, unable to speak. For the next 2 weeks, Jacob worked harder than he had ever worked in his life. He mended the barn door and fixed the fence posts. He helped Sarah in the garden, turning the stubborn soil. He rode into town and negotiated the sale of a small parcel of the Henderson land to a neighboring farmer, enough to raise $500. Thomas Henderson's health improved with the lifting of his immediate worries. Though still weak, he was able to sit on the porch and direct their efforts, offering advice from his decades of farming. On the 13th day, the new debt collector arrived. His name was Samuel Cross, and he was everything Jacob had once been. Hard, efficient, unmoved by sob stories. But when Samuel Cross reviewed the paperwork, he found that Jacob had made a small but significant error in his original report. He had listed the debt as $3,000, but the actual amount, with interest and fees properly calculated, was $3,200. However, Jacob had also failed to note that the Henderson family had paid property taxes for the next 3 years in advance, a payment that could be credited against the debt. The numbers, when properly balanced, showed that with the $500 from the land sale and Sarah's original $87 plus the tax credit, the Henderson family now owed only $1,900. "Still more than you have," Cross said. Though his tone was less harsh than it might have been, Jacob spoke up. "I would like to make a payment on their behalf. I have $83. Cross looked at him with narrowed eyes. "You are the one who was fired." "Yes, sir. And now you are paying their debt?" "Yes, sir." Cross studied him for a long moment, then looked at Sarah and her father, who had come out to the porch supported by his daughter's arm. The old man's eyes were fierce despite his frailty, and Sarah stood tall, her hand protective on her father's shoulder. $1,817 remaining, Cross said finally. "I will give you 6 months to come up with it. If you fail, the land is forfeit. No extensions, no excuses." After Cross rode away, Thomas Henderson sat heavily in his chair. 6 months, he said. It might as well be 6 years. But Jacob saw something that the old man did not. He saw determination in Sarah's eyes. He saw the good land that could produce crops if the rains would only come. He saw the possibility of hope. "We will find a way," Jacob said, and they did. Over the following months, something remarkable happened. Jacob's story spread through the county. People heard about the debt collector who had given up everything to help a struggling family. They heard about Sarah's offer to sacrifice herself for her father. They heard about an old man trying to hold on to the land where his wife was buried, and they came to help. Neighbors showed up to help with the planting when the rains finally came in late spring. The merchant in town extended credit for seed and supplies. The church took up a collection. Slowly, dollar by dollar, the debt began to shrink. Jacob worked the fields alongside Sarah, and somewhere between the planting and the harvest, somewhere between sunrise and sunset, they fell in love. It was not the dramatic, passionate love of youth. It was something deeper, something built on mutual respect and shared struggle. It was the love of two people who had seen each other at their most desperate and most determined, and had chosen to stand together anyway. On the day they made the final payment to the bank, Sarah and Jacob stood in the office in Austin while the clerk stamped the papers. "Paid in full," the stamp read, and those 3 words felt like a miracle. Thomas Henderson lived another 3 years, long enough to see his daughter married to the man who had ridden to take his land but had chosen mercy instead, long enough to see his first grandchild, long enough to know that the land would stay in the family, that his wife's grave would be tended, that his legacy would endure. On the day Thomas died, he held Sarah's hand and Jacob's hand and brought them together. "You two saved each other," he whispered. "That is what love does. It saves us from the worst parts of ourselves and brings out the best." Years later, Jacob would sit on that same porch and watch the sun set over fields that now thrived. Sarah would come out and sit beside him, her hand finding his with the easy comfort of long companionship. Their children would play in the yard where their grandmother was buried beneath the cottonwood tree, and Jacob would think about the day he had ridden to the Henderson farm to take everything they had. He would think about the young woman who had offered herself to save her father. He would think about the choice he had made to be something better than what the world expected of him. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create ripples that spread far beyond what we can imagine. Sometimes mercy is stronger than money. Sometimes the best things we can do are the things that cost us everything but give us back something far more valuable. Love, purpose, the knowledge that we chose correctly when we stood at the crossroads between profit and compassion. Jacob never regretted the job he lost or the easy life he gave up, because what he gained was so much greater: a home, a family, a love that was built on sacrifice and saved by grace, and that he learned was worth more than all the land and money in Texas. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope and kindness, and leave a comment below telling us what part of the story resonated most with you. Your support helps us continue sharing these tales of love, redemption, and the enduring power of human compassion.